Sarah Mitchell, 26, has always felt like an outsider in her own family since her father remarried. When her wealthy stepmother Linda deliberately excludes her from the traditional family Thanksgiving dinner, claiming there's no room while welcoming distant relatives, Sarah discovers this is just the beginning of a calculated plan. Linda has been systematically poisoning her father against her, hoping to secure the entire inheritance for her own children. But when Sarah uncovers evidence of her stepmother's financial fraud and manipulation, she realizes she holds the power to expose everything. This Thanksgiving will be the last time anyone underestimates her. The smell of roasted turkey should have felt like coming home, but standing on the porch of my childhood house in Greenwich, Connecticut, it felt like stepping into enemy territory. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I never thought a family holiday could become a battlefield. But here I was, about to fight for my place at my own father's table. The November wind whipped through the bare oak trees lining our street, their branches reaching toward the gray sky like skeletal fingers. I clutched the pumpkin pie I'd spent hours making, my grandmother's recipe written in her careful handwriting, and rang the doorbell of the house where I'd grown up. Through the frosted glass panels, I could see warm light spilling from the dining room, hear the murmur of voices and laughter. Family. My family. Or what was left of it. Sarah! My father opened the door, his face lighting up with genuine warmth. At 62, David Mitchell still carried himself with the confidence of a successful attorney, though I noticed new lines around his eyes. You made it, sweetheart. Of course I made it, Dad. It's Thanksgiving. I hugged him, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the holiday spices drifting from the kitchen. For a moment, everything felt normal. But then I heard her voice. David, who's at the door? We're about to serve dinner. Linda's tone carried that particular edge I'd learned to recognize over the past 3 years since she'd married my father. Sweet on the surface, steel underneath. My stepmother appeared behind him, perfectly coiffed in a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Linda Ashworth Mitchell had the kind of polished beauty that came from expensive salons and personal trainers, blonde hair that never had a strand out of place, and manicured nails that had never seen a day of real work. She was 45 but looked 35 and made sure everyone knew it. Oh, her smile faltered when she saw me. Sarah, I thought you weren't coming. What? I looked between her and my father, confusion creeping into my voice. Dad, you invited me. We confirmed yesterday. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Through the doorway, I could see the dining room table set for 12 people, extended to accommodate what looked like a small army of guests. Crystal glasses caught the candlelight, and the good china, my mother's china, gleamed against the white tablecloth. Well, of course you're welcome, Linda said finally, though her tone suggested anything but. It's just that we have so many people this year. My sister's family from California, some colleagues of David's, and, well, she gestured vaguely toward the crowded dining room. Space is quite limited. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. Space is limited? In a house with a dining room that seats 20? Sarah, honey. Dad stepped in, his voice taking on that careful tone he used when he was trying to avoid conflict. Maybe you could eat in the kitchen. Linda's put together such a beautiful presentation for our guests. Our guests. Not his daughter. Our guests. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. You want me to eat Thanksgiving dinner in the kitchen while strangers sit at my mother's table? Linda's hand went to her throat, a gesture I'd learned meant she was about to play the victim. Sarah, there's no need to be dramatic. It's just dinner. Family is about being together, not where you sit. Family. I repeated the word like it tasted bitter. Right. Through the dining room archway, I could see Linda's children from her first marriage, Bradley, 28, and Jessica, 25, holding court at the table. Bradley was telling some story that had everyone laughing, his Harvard law degree and trust fund making him the golden child Linda had always wanted my father to see in me. Jessica, fresh from her European art history tour, was showing photos on her phone to an elderly woman I didn't recognize. They belonged here. I apparently didn't. You know what? I set the pumpkin pie down on the hall table with more force than necessary. I think I'll pass on dinner in the kitchen. Sarah, don't be like this, Dad pleaded, but I could see in his eyes that he wasn't going to fight Linda on this. He never did anymore. Like what, Dad? Like someone who expected to be treated as your daughter rather than an unwanted guest? I pulled my coat tighter around me. Enjoy your perfect dinner with your perfect family. I turned to leave, but Linda's voice stopped me. Sarah, wait. She stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind her. In the sudden privacy, her mask slipped completely. Let's be honest about what this is. You're 26 years old. You have your own life, your own apartment in Brooklyn. This house, this family, it's moved on. Maybe it's time you did too. The November air felt sharp against my skin, but not as sharp as her words. What exactly are you saying, Linda? I'm saying that your father has a new life now. New priorities. And continuing to cling to some fantasy about being daddy's little girl is frankly embarrassing. Her smile was cold, calculated. You're not a child anymore, Sarah. Stop acting like one. Something inside me crystallized in that moment. This wasn't about seating arrangements. This was about erasure. Systematic, deliberate erasure of my place in my father's life. I see what this is, I said quietly. This is about the will, isn't it? About making sure I'm not around when decisions get made about Dad's estate? Linda's eyes flashed. I have no idea what you're talking about. But I did. Suddenly, pieces that had been floating disconnected in my mind started clicking together. Dad's increasing distance over the past year. The way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. The casual mentions of how expensive my father's care might be when he got older. How important it was to plan for the future. We'll see about that, I said, pulling out my phone. Enjoy your dinner, Linda. Something tells me it might be your last time playing hostess in my mother's house. As I walked back to my car, I could hear the sounds of celebration continuing inside. Laughter, clinking glasses, the warmth I'd been excluded from. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt something stronger than hurt. I felt determined. What would you do if your own family shut you out during the holidays? Would you fight back or walk away? If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own home, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see how this story unfolds, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because what I discovered the next day would change everything forever. But first, I needed to make some phone calls. Linda Ashworth Mitchell had no idea who she was really dealing with. The Monday morning after Thanksgiving, I sat in my cramped Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by boxes of documents and a determination that surprised even me. My laptop screen glowed with financial records I'd been piecing together for hours, and what I was discovering made my blood run cold. Linda hadn't just been trying to push me out of family dinners. She'd been systematically stealing from my father. It started with a phone call to my father's longtime accountant, Frank Rosenberg. Frank had been handling the Mitchell family finances since before I was born, and when I explained my concerns about some irregular withdrawals I'd noticed on Dad's bank statements, his voice grew grave. Sarah, I'm glad you called, Frank said, his Brooklyn accent thick with worry. I've been trying to reach your father for weeks about some discrepancies, but Linda keeps saying he's too busy to discuss financial matters. Too busy. Right. What kind of discrepancies, Frank? Well, there have been significant transfers to accounts I don't recognize. 50,000 here, 30,000 there. When I asked about them, Linda provided documentation showing they were for home improvements and medical expenses, but he paused. Something doesn't feel right. That something was about to get a lot clearer. After hanging up with Frank, I drove to Manhattan and spent the day in the financial district, calling in favors from college friends who now worked in banking and accounting. By Tuesday evening, I had assembled a paper trail that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. Linda had been forging my father's signature on financial documents for over a year. The home improvements were actually cashier's checks made out to a shell company she'd created. The medical expenses were funding her children's lifestyles, Bradley's new BMW, Jessica's art collection, Linda's monthly shopping sprees that could fund a small country. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Sarah? The voice on my phone was nervous, young. It was Emma, Linda's 22-year-old niece who worked part-time as Linda's personal assistant. I need to talk to you. About your stepmother. We met at a coffee shop in Soho, Emma clutching her phone like a lifeline. She was a sweet kid, working her way through NYU, and I could see the guilt eating at her. I didn't know what to do, she said, her hands shaking as she showed me her phone. I recorded this by accident last week when I was taking notes for Linda's schedule. The audio file she played made my heart stop. Linda's voice, crystal clear. Bradley, stop worrying. Sarah won't be a problem much longer. I've been documenting her erratic behavior for months. The angry outbursts, the financial desperation. When the time comes to show David he needs professional care, guess who will be declared mentally incompetent to make those decisions? Another voice, Bradley. What about the will? Already handled. I had David sign a new version last month. He thought it was just updating the trust language, but it effectively removes Sarah as primary beneficiary. Everything goes to me, then to you and Jessica. She'll get a small allowance, enough to keep her from causing trouble. My hands clenched around my coffee cup. Emma, There's more, she whispered. Look at this. She pulled up photos on her phone. Documents from Linda's home office that Emma had access to while organizing files. Bank statements showing accounts in the Cayman Islands. Correspondence with attorneys about elder care facilities. A psychological evaluation report about my father's declining mental state. A report I knew for certain he'd never undergone. But the final photo made me gasp out loud. It was a handwritten note in Linda's distinctive script. S becomes increasingly volatile. Recommend limiting access to D until guardianship transfer complete. S to your timeline, 6 months. Guardianship transfer. They weren't just stealing his money. They were planning to have my father declared incompetent so Linda could control his entire estate. Emma, you have to testify about this, I said urgently. This is elder abuse, fraud, and attempted theft of millions of dollars. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I know. I've been so scared, but seeing what they did to you at Thanksgiving, it isn't right. Your dad loves you, Sarah. He talks about you all the time when Linda isn't around. She's been telling him you're too busy with your own life to care about him anymore. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. Linda had been playing both sides, telling my father I was distant while telling me I wasn't welcome. Isolating him while positioning herself as his only loyal family member. But she'd made one crucial mistake. Emma, I need you to do something for me, I said, pulling out a business card. This is my friend Rebecca Chen. She's a prosecutor with the Manhattan DA's office. You're going to call her tomorrow and tell her everything you've told me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father, alone in that big house with a woman who saw him as nothing more than a paycheck. How long had he been confused about our relationship? How many lies had Linda fed him about me? But I also thought about my mother, who died when I was 16. She'd made my father promise to always protect me, to make sure I knew I was loved. She'd worn her grandmother's engagement ring, a simple solitaire that Dad had given me for my 18th birthday. Linda was wearing that ring now. I'd noticed it at Thanksgiving, sparkling on her finger as she dismissed me from my own family's table. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Detective Martinez, NYPD Financial Crimes Unit. Ms. Chen asked me to contact you. Can you meet tomorrow at 2 p.m.? We'd like to discuss the evidence you've compiled. I smiled in the darkness of my apartment. Linda Ashworth Mitchell thought she was smart. She thought she could manipulate an elderly man and steal his fortune while erasing his daughter from his life. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. But first I had one more call to make. To the one person who could help me save my father before it was too late. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was betraying your family? How did you handle finding out the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see how this confrontation plays out. Because tomorrow's meeting with the police was just the beginning of Linda's worst nightmare. What I was planning next would expose her crimes to everyone, including my father. And this time, there would be nowhere for her to hide. The sting operation took place on a crisp December morning, exactly 2 weeks after my Thanksgiving humiliation. I stood in the lobby of my father's law firm, wearing a wire and trying to keep my hands from shaking as Detective Martinez's voice crackled softly in my earpiece. Remember, Sarah, we need her to admit to the forgeries and the guardianship plan on tape. Let her think she's won. 20 floors above me, Linda was meeting with my father and his business partners to discuss his retirement plans, a meeting I was supposedly unaware of. But thanks to Emma's inside information and Detective Martinez's expertise, I knew exactly what Linda planned to propose today. The elevator ride felt eternal. When the doors opened on the top floor, I could see through the glass conference room where Linda sat beside my father, a stack of legal documents spread before them. She was wearing my mother's ring again, and it caught the December sunlight streaming through the windows. My father looked older, smaller somehow, as Linda spoke in low, concerned tones to his partners. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see her performance. The devoted wife worried about her husband's declining health, the responsible woman stepping up to handle difficult decisions. It was Academy Award-worthy acting. Too bad it was all being recorded. "Excuse me," I said, pushing open the conference room door. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." The reaction was electric. Linda's face went white, then flushed red. My father's eyes widened in surprise, and his business partners looked confused by the sudden tension in the room. "Sarah?" Dad stood up, genuine pleasure in his voice. "What are you doing here, sweetheart?" "I came to discuss my future in the family business," I said smoothly, taking the empty chair directly across from Linda. "I understand there are some important decisions being made today." Linda recovered quickly, her mask sliding back into place. "Sarah, this really isn't the appropriate time. We're discussing very complex financial matters." "You mean like the $200,000 you've stolen from my father's accounts over the past year?" I asked pleasantly. The room went dead silent. "Sarah!" Dad's voice was sharp with shock. "What are you talking about?" Linda would never— "Dad, I have bank records," I interrupted gently. "Forged signatures, shell companies, wire transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands." Should I continue? Linda's hands gripped the edge of the table. "This is ridiculous. David, your daughter is obviously having some kind of breakdown." "This is exactly what I was trying to protect you from." "Protect him from what, Linda?" "The truth?" I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. "Would you like to hear the recording of you planning to have Dad declared mentally incompetent so you could control his estate? Or maybe you'd prefer to see the photos of the psychological evaluation you fabricated, the one claiming he has dementia when he's never been examined by that doctor?" The color drained completely from Linda's face. Around the table, my father's business partners were leaning forward, their expressions shifting from confusion to alarm. "David," one of them said quietly, "maybe we should postpone this meeting." But my father was staring at Linda with an expression I'd never seen before. Dawning understanding mixed with betrayal. "Linda, what is Sarah talking about?" "It's all lies," Linda said desperately. "She's been unstable for months, David. Remember how angry she was at Thanksgiving? How she stormed out over nothing? I've been trying to protect you from this kind of manipulation." "Nothing?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You excluded me from my own family's Thanksgiving dinner and told me to stop acting like Daddy's little girl. You said I should move on because you had new priorities." Dad's face crumpled. "She said you didn't want to come. That you were too busy with your own life to spend time with family anymore." "And you believed her instead of calling me directly?" The hurt in his eyes was real, but so was the confusion. "Linda showed me texts from you saying you had other plans, that family dinners were becoming a burden." "I never sent those texts, Dad. Check your phone. Check the metadata. I'm betting Linda sent them from a spoofed number." Linda stood abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this." "David, we're leaving. Now." "Actually, Linda, you're not going anywhere." Detective Martinez stepped into the conference room, his badge visible. "Linda Ashworth Mitchell, you're under arrest for elder abuse, wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit theft." The Miranda rights echoed in the conference room as Linda was handcuffed, her perfect composure finally cracking completely. "This is insane." "David, tell them. I love you. I would never hurt you." But my father was staring at the documents scattered across the table. The guardianship papers, the falsified medical reports, the forged signatures in his own name. "My God," he whispered. "How long has this been going on?" "About a year, Dad. Emma Chen, Linda's assistant, has been recording conversations and documenting everything. She's the one who came forward." As the police led Linda away, she turned back one last time. "You think you've won, Sarah? Your father will never trust again? You've destroyed his faith in love itself." Maybe she was right about that. But I'd saved his life, his fortune, and hopefully his relationship with his daughter. After the police left, Dad and I sat alone in the conference room. The December sun was setting, casting long shadows across the legal documents that would need to be sorted through, the damage that would need to be undone. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'm so incredibly sorry, Sarah. I should have known. I should have trusted you." "She was very good at what she did, Dad. Manipulation is an art form when someone's that skilled at it." "Your mother's ring," he said suddenly, his voice breaking. "She took your mother's ring. We'll get it back," I promised. "We'll get everything back." 6 months later, Linda was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Bradley and Jessica were charged as accessories, though they received lighter sentences in exchange for testimony. My father and I spent those months rebuilding our relationship, brick by careful brick. The house in Greenwich feels like home again now. We hosted Thanksgiving there last month, and for the first time in years, it was just family. Real family. Dad carved the turkey, I made dessert, and we talked late into the night about Mom, about forgiveness, about second chances. The greatest revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's building something better from the ashes of their betrayal. Linda thought she could erase me from my father's life, steal his fortune, and rewrite our family story. Instead, she gave us the chance to write a better ending. To anyone who's been betrayed by someone they trusted, who's felt erased from their own family story, remember that the truth has a way of surfacing. Document everything, trust your instincts, and never be afraid to fight for the people you love. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to expose someone's lies to protect your family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, subscribe for more true stories of family betrayal, justice, and ultimately healing. Because sometimes the best families are the ones that survive the worst betrayals and come out stronger on the other side. The ring is back on my finger now where it belongs. And every time I look at it, I remember that love, real love, is worth fighting for.